think we should just go ahead and start. I'll introduce Yuuka. Maybe we introduce ourselves this time since it's a smaller group and it's all heavy on people, and maybe Yuuka doesn't know all of us, but I'll start with introducing Yuuka and then we'll go around and introduce ourselves. Okay, so yeah, so today we have Yuuka Kanakubo, and she'll be talking about the interplay between core and corona components in high-energy nuclear collisions. Yuuka received her master's degree from Sophia University, and she is now working on her PhD also at Sophia University, where she has a Japan Society for the Promotion of Science Research Fellowship. Her research focuses on theoretical developments for high-energy nuclear collisions. Additionally, she was awarded the Nuclear Physics Zuber Young Scientist Award for theory talk at Corkman of 2019. So we can expect a nice talk from Yuuka today. And she also was awarded the Global Award for Young Women Research. Yeah. So maybe I'll start with myself. I'm Laura Havner. I'm a postdoc in the Yale group here, and I work on the ALICE collaboration, working on jet substructure measurements in lead and also in proton-proton collisions.
Yeah. Hi, Yuuka. I'm Raghav. You saw we met back in Germany a couple of years ago. So I'm a postdoc here on STAR experiment doing jet analysis. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Monika. I am a PhD student from Czech Republic, and I'm working on a STAR experiment on a jet substructure, and I'm working with Raghav. That's why I'm here.
I'm Mike. I'm also a postdoc here. I work for the ALICE experiment, and usually I'm involved in photon analysis.
Hi, I'm Helen Keynes. I'm the STAR leader in the group. Yeah.
So hi, I'm Bianca. I am a postdoc. I just started working with Ian Wolf here. I work on effective field theories, self-collinear effective theory, factorization, jet physics. Nice.
And I'm Ian. So I just started here as a faculty on the theory group, but I work on jets and jet physics. And I apologize that I have to teach in about 10 minutes, so I'll run out partway through your talk. There's nothing to do with the talk.
Okay, so thank you so much, and I'm really happy to see you over you guys. So thank you so much for inviting me to the seminar. So should I start now?
Yeah, I think you can go ahead and start.
Online. Do you want to?
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah,
So people on the remote on Zoom will also, I think, unmute and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, since I'm the one that brought it up, let me get started. So hi, Yuuka, I'm Tom. I think we met in Wuhan back in Fort Matter, and we also talked by email about one of the previous papers. So I'm a fifth-year graduate student. I'm working on STAR. So mainly I was mostly for the past few years working on the inclusive jet and hadron analysis in P-GOAT and in proton GOAT system. But recently I've just shifted gears and work on the inclusive charge hadron yield in the isobar system. Yeah, nice to meet you again.
I guess I can go next. I'm Ben Faust. I'm a graduate student working on short baseline neutrino reactor experiments.
Hi, my name is Katie. I'm a grad student working on the ELISE experiment in the JET group.
Yeah, I think that's everyone. So
That's okay.
sorry, I think so.
Okay, so
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
should I start now?
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for again. So I'm Yuuka Kanakubo from Sophia University. Today, I'm going to talk about our recent paper, the interplay between core and corona components in high energy nuclear collisions. This work is a collaboration with Esuki Tachibana and Tetsumi Hirano. I'm going to talk about these recent analysis results and some updates about our model. So since I didn't know what kind of people are joining to this seminar, let me start from this slide about cook-grown plasma. So this is what we are interested in. This is a state of cokes and gluons under thermal and chemical equilibrium. So according to the QCD, cokes and gluons are confined into hadrons. And if we heat up the system, those cokes and gluons are deconfined from hadrons. And at extremely high temperature regime, the degree of freedom of the system is governed by cokes and gluons. And it's such a high temperature, about 2 trillion degrees, and this extreme matter was realized at the early universe just after the Big Bang. So revealing the properties of this primordial matter is the extreme goal of our the heavy ion research field. But how can we investigate such an extreme matter on the Earth? There is an only way to create the Qgp, that is the high energy heavy ion collisions. So here I have a schematic picture of the evolution of high energy heavy ion collision. So the first, we have this Lorentz contracted nuclei, and here the collision happened, and the matter is created in between this outgoing nuclei. And once this matter reaches local equilibrium, and this becomes the Qgp. And as it evolves, the matter cools down, and at some point, the cokes and gluons are reconfined into hadrons. And after the interactions among hadrons, then those hadrons fly into the detectors. So the important point here is that the Qgp is just a transient state in the middle of this reaction. So how can we access the properties of the Qgp from experimental data? Well, since this is just this is a dynamical reaction, and Qgp is just in the middle of this reaction, we have to describe the dynamics of this locally equilibrated matter. So we use the relativistic hydrodynamics. There was a big press release on April 18 in 2005. The Qgp was found to be almost perfect liquid, which confirmed the success of the relativistic hydrodynamics. Let me explain the relativistic hydrodynamics in one slide. So in a nutshell, this is just an energy momentum conservation. So for this Tmu is an energy momentum tensor, which is decomposed with 4 velocity of fluids. And in order to close the equation of motion, we need another relation between pressure and energy density, and which is the equation of state. And we usually use smoothly combined equation of state. We use lattice equation of state at high temperature and equation of state of hadronic resonance gas at low temperature regime. And here I have this schematic picture showing what we really see under the relativistic hydrodynamics. So we see the many-body system of cokes and gluons, which is locally equilibrated. And we see the dynamics of these locally equilibrated patches. However, we cannot explain the experimental data just using hydrodynamics, since, as we discussed at the beginning, it's just a transient state in the middle of the reaction. So we need different pictures for to understand different stages. So again, here I have this schematic picture of space-time evolution of heavy ion collision. So first, these incoming nuclei collide each other, and the QGP is generated in here, and this changes to the hadron gas after this cools down. So for the description of QGP and collision, we usually put an initial condition by assuming initial profile of QGP and solve the relativistic hydrodynamics. And then at some point, we change the description from fluids to particles, which is hadrons. And against those hadrons, we perform hadronic transport, like hadronic interactions and hadronic, the resonance decays of the hadrons. And then we can finally obtain the final state hadrons. This kind of multi-stage dynamical model, which is based on hydrodynamics, has been proved to success in describing the heavy ion collision experimental data. So it has been considered that QGP is generated in heavy ion collision, and its experimental data is well described by the multi-stage dynamical model. However, recent experimental data suggests that there might be QGP formation even in small systems if you go to high multiplicity event. So it has been regarded that PP collisions were reference for the heavy ion collision where QGP is formed. But there was a big paradigm shift around 2010. Some experimental data suggested that there might be the QGP signals in small systems if you see special high multiplicity events. And here I listed up 3 major experimental data suggesting that the QGP signals in small systems. And but I don't go to the details here, but instead these experimental data are saying that the first one, the strange hadrons might be generated thermally in small systems. And the second one is that final state hadrons behaves like hydro because they show coactivity. And which is exactly the same observable, same signals observed in heavy ion collisions. So this kind of naive question comes up. Is there any comprehensive pictures which can explain from PP to heavy ion collisions? However, we probably cannot. We wouldn't explain the PP collisions with hydro-based dynamical model as it is. Here I showed two cases where hydro-based model doesn't work. So the first one, this is the Alice experimental data showing strangeness enhancement. So the vertical axis is a particle ratio and the horizontal axis is multiplicity. And here I plot this lines shows the value that we will obtain from pure hydro model. So here you see this for central collisions, central heavy ion collisions, this can be explained by purely from hydro calculation. However, if you go to smaller multiplicity regime, then the deviation becomes larger and larger. So even in heavy ion collisions, if you go to peripheral collision, then you cannot explain this vertical ratio only with hydrodynamics. And needless to say, small systems, as long as you are using just hydro calculation, then you cannot explain the vertical ratio obtained in small systems. And the second case is at high PT and also very low PT regions. So for high PT, the particle production will be described by hard scaffoldings, and also it has been discussed that there is a lack of production in the comparison between experimental data and hydro calculation. If you see very low PT region, like PT is less than 0.5 DeV. So in these cases, we need to extend applicability of hydro-based frameworks. So this is the motivation of our work. If you see PP collisions, the particle production is well studied and well described by fragmentation from hard particles. And while if you see a very special high multiplicity event, then just a minute, please. So I think the guard is coming. Okay. 今ちょっと会議で場所だ。
What are you doing here late at night?
Yeah, Japan too.
I think I'm actually in office and a guard is coming. So just a moment, please. 一応平野先生で金久保です。学生です。平野先生のここですか、平野哲文。はい、平野哲文。はい。の、金久保で。どうしますか、帰りますか。帰ります。これが終わったら。はい、まあ帰ります。はい。
Is that really translating the?
ありがとうございます。
Is it or is it just making random words?
It's random words.
Turboman is for the
That's very.
Okay.
Highly says yes, right?
Yeah, right.
The generator doesn't understand Japanese at all.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I heard her say like that, but it's not there at all.
I'm back and I think it's okay now. So
You're okay, Yuuka? Okay. Go ahead then.
Okay.
But actually, Yuuka, while you're interrupted, if you go back one slide, please, a second. So, yeah. So your commentary about the yields on the left not working, but I thought hydro, there's some assumption about some chemistry going on that's not really built into hydro itself, is there? For these yields. I mean, I thought hydro more explains the transverse momentum rather than the yields that come out, no?
You're talking about which, this one?
No, the left-hand one, the one where you said in the small systems, the yields are no longer right because hydro would say that lambda to pi ratio is a constant. Yeah. I mean, that's just whatever chemical assumptions you're making, isn't it?
Yes, I'm still don't get your point, but
But
so-
as hydro doesn't know anything about chemical potentials, right? You sort of put them in almost by hand, don't you?
well, so what I was trying to say is that so just if you assume that the particle production is just coming from the equilibrated matter, which have a constant temperature, then that will give this constant value for the particle ratio for.
Thanks. Yeah, got it.
I'm sorry, so if you maybe I missed your question, so please.
No, you're good. That answered me. Thank you.
So okay, so motivation.
Yeah, you're saying, I'm sorry, but Tony, you seem to say like the lambda to pi ratio is but a constant, but like that line you're only looking at Pythia, right?
No,
Should
okay,
we
so
look at more is the dotted lines, I suppose.
the lambda pi is not. So we have here the k star and lambda and omega for each, and experimental method showing this dependence of multiplicity. So it's not constant.
Right.
And, but I mean, if you just calculate the hydro, then hydro have a scale of the switching temperature that is fixed for the even if it's small systems or large gliding systems. So the result would be same. Like the result would be constant for all sizes. So that's what I meant.
Okay. Just to make sure like Pythia doesn't include hydro as far as I know. So we're looking at like the other two comparison lines. That's like just to make sure.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so the motivation is to describe this whole phenomena. So if you see PP collisions, the particle production is described by fragmentation, and but you also see the coactivity in small systems in high multiplicity event. Then if you go to heavy ion collisions, then the coactivity, then hydrodynamics can explain the low PT region usually. Then if you go to higher PT regime, then there is a jet quenching due to the interaction between Qgp fluid and hard particles. So we want to describe these all phenomena within a unified framework. And we want to understand from small to large gliding systems in a consistent way. So we proposed the dynamical core commercialization model, and this model is based on the core columnar picture. So the core, under this model, the core is Qgp fluid, which is equilibrated matter, and corona is non-equilibrated partons. And we describe this dynamical aspect of the core columnar picture by generating Qgp fluid dynamically. And we want to describe from low to high PP, from forward to backward, and from PP to heavy ion collisions. So the name of our model is the Dynamical Core Commercialization model. And recently we updated our model. So we call this model as CCI2. And here's the model flowchart of the CCI2. So the input of our model is the initially produced photons obtained from Pythia and Pythia 8 and Gantia for heavy ion collisions. And then we put those initially produced partons into the dynamical core commercialization, and we separate the system into core and corona. For core Qgp fluid, we sample hadrons via Kupferfly as usual. And for corona, we perform string fermentation to get direct hadrons. And then after we get direct hadrons, we perform hadronic afterburner against that direct hadrons to obtain final state. And this one, the dynamical core commercialization, is the key feature of this work. So I will explain this point in the following slides. So what is the dynamical commercialization? What is the uniqueness of this framework? We generate initial conditions dynamically. So for conventional hydro, we usually assume initial profile of Qgp fluid, and we put the initial condition at fixed time. And we solve the hydrodynamic equation against that initial conditions. And the initial condition can be sometimes like scaled by some factors, or like even parameterized one. However, under this framework, we locally generate initial conditions via sources using initially produced partons obtained from PCR. So in that sense, in our framework, the beam energy is completely conserved. So first we have initially produced partons and vacuum, and they traverse in vacuum, depositing their energy and momentum dynamically. And under this framework, we have two assumptions. That is, the first one, the sources of Qgp is initially produced partons. And the second one is the system can be described with two components, Qgp fluid and partons. And if we accept these assumptions, then we can write down a continuum equation for fluid and a parton like this. And if we put T minu parton onto the right-hand side, then the space-time evolution of fluid is written in, like this. And the source terms can be expressed in this way. So it is a whole momentum deposition rate from partons. But for this momentum deposition rate of partons, we still have room to model this dPdt. So we put the quark on a picture to model the momentum deposition rate by assuming that the equilibration process originates from the sufficient secondary scatterings among partons. We describe the dynamical aspect of the quark on a picture by using equation of motion with a drag force due to secondary scatterings. And then we define dPdt in this way, but it should be noted that it's an instant equilibration of deposited energy and momentum. So it's not that we are pursuing the equilibration process. But we want to describe the dynamical aspect of the quark on a picture phenomenologically. So this summation is taken for all partons that will collide with this ice parton. So we check the trajectory of each parton produced in one event, and we decide, we judge if the collision happened or not. And the collision criterion is defined like this, using the geometrical assumption of the cross section. And the cross section, we use this parameterized one. This depends on the energy of the center of mass energy of parton pair, and this sigma 0 is a power meter. And for the density of parton, we estimate the density by using Gaussian function. And in this way, we count the number of collisions scattered with this ice parton. So since we have this number density and cross section, the partons with low PT and or partons in dense lesion tend to generate Qgp fluid and become core, while partons with high PT and or partons in dilute lesion tend to survive as corona without depositing so much energy. And here I'm showing the demonstration of the dynamical core commercialization. This is taken from the event 2.76 TeV. This is shown in transverse plane, and this is shown in x-axis plane. And this color plots are the energy density of Qgp fluid. And these tiny circles, tiny yellowish circles are initially referred as partons and non-equilibrated one. So first, we start from vacuum, and partons start traversing in vacuum and deposit the energy and momentum dynamically. And some partons disappearing since those partons completely deposit the energy and momentum within this time scale. And it should be also noted that the Qgp fluid is generated in which partons are highly populated, while in dilute lesion there is almost no Qgp formation due to the quark-columnar picture. And
Yuuka, can I ask a question? So before you go, so on the previous slides, so can you go to the one with the equation that you had for the scattering cross section?
Cross section. Okay.
Well, here the probability. So this what is this tau here? Is that proper time?
The tau, this one?
Yeah.
This is the time steps of hydro, so it's proper time, yeah.
So is that the same T that you had again on the previous slide?
Yeah. So this is just for like simplicity. So we are performing a hydro calculation in tau eta as coordinates. So it's actually not like, how can I say it?
Right. So in the hydro, you have this proper time, right? But then when you have a parton, how is this time estimated for that parton?
For partons, we assume that all partons are formed at 0.1 centimeter. But that is an assumption for calculation.
Okay, so they start at 0.1, and then when you identify the next splitting, whatever, so that time for the parton is basically virtuality over mass squared, or what?
So the initial partons that we use as an input is after the final state radiation. So it's not the virtual one. So it's after the final state radiation.
Oh, okay. So the entire shower is done by Pythia, and then you put those into the individual cells.
Exactly.
Got it.
But,
okay.
Yeah, that's one of the model. So
Yeah, I understand. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm showing one event from PP collision at T7 TeV, But this is a ZT event. So I generated the one event using PD hat minimum equals 100 GB. So in this eta x eta s plan, here there is a back-to-back jet generated at mid rapidity, but it's not appearing in this region because I use this cut for the coordinate space. But due to that high PT particle, the Qgp is not really generated at mid rapidity. So here I'm showing the energy budget in the dynamical core commercialization. Here I'm showing rather than PP collision corresponding to the previously shown the demonstration. So the horizontal axis is the time step of hydro, and vertical axis is a fraction of energy compared to the initial partons. And this red and blues are fraction of energy from core and corona. And this orange one is the fraction of energy of total energy, is a summation of core and corona. So what you see here is that the core starts from 0, so which means because we start from vacuum for fluid, and the energy is converted from corona to core like gradually. And also you see that the total energy is nicely conserved. This is actually the incoming beam energy, and that is nicely conserved within this time scale. So what is the characteristics of this DCCI2? We would say that this is the dynamical realization of the core corona picture. But we still have one thing that we have to deal with. That is the initial color flow obtained from Pythia, since partons obtained from Pythia are connected with color strings. So, but if there is an overlap between a finite temperature matter and color strings, then there should be a modification on the color strings, color structures. So we do this in a phenomenological way. So at a certain time scale, 0.3 femtometer, we check the overlap between a the hydro profile and color string configuration. And if we trace this color flow generated in this one event, and we find out the boundary of the switching temperature. In this case, it's around here, here, and here, and here. And we cut the string around this hypersurface by sampling a thermal parton from the hypersurface. And we create the color singlet object for strings, which is staying outside of the hydro. So for those strings, we hadronize them at this moment. But we still have some surviving partons in the fluid, and we keep performing dynamical core commercialization for such a surviving partons until they come out from hydro. And then once this parton comes out from hydro, we sample thermal parton again. Then we create the color singlet object. So in this model, we have the non-thermal and thermal combination, and this contributes as the corona components. Okay, So in this way, we separate the system into core and corona. For core, we sample some of patterns using Cooper-Fly. And for corona, we hadronize them using string fermentation. And finally, we put those hadrons into a jam to perform hadronic afterburner. And here I'm showing a space-time distribution of the direct hadrons. This is a result obtained from the collision at 2.76 TeV. Here's the production vortices obtained from core and corona. The one is corona in Y plane, and this is plotted in T plane. And here I'm showing the probability distribution of the production point of core and corona, direct core and corona. And also I plotted this orange distribution, which is a final interaction point in hadronic afterburner. And this is the probability density as a function of radius and a function of time. And is double peak of the hadron vortices for core and corona, like this, before the hadronic rescheduling. And here I'm showing the PP collision results. And since this is PP collision, there is much less hadronic production. And if you see the probability distributions for PP collisions, since the hydro lifetime is shorter than heavy ion collision, and which is like 1 to 2 femtometer. So as a result, the direct hadron distribution from core and corona is staying closely in space-time coordinate. So this might indicate that there would be interactions among core and corona particle, even in PP collisions. But here's a caveat. So core and corona identification of the final hadrons is accessible only with switching off hadronic reschedulings. So which means that we cannot tell if that hadron is actually coming from core or corona when we see the experimental data. And this is a last slide of the model plot. So this DCCI is a combination of the hydro and PCR. If you look at this DCCI from high energy physics community's point of view, this can be understood as a hydro and also the hadronic afterburner on PCR. And if you see this from heavy ion collision community's point of view, this can be understood as corona, non-equilibrium correction on hydro. And what we want to do is to connect these two communities. So let me move on to the results. So first, we start from fixing some major parameters using this omega pi ratio from PP to heavy ion collisions. This is omega pi ratio, and horizontal axis is CMD data. And this orange plots, the dark orange plots are taken from flow simulations, and they are compared with these block points, the Alice experimental data. And I also plotted these gray points obtained from default PCR. And here we have, this is PP collision and leaded collisions. And here I'm showing two lines which show the omega pi ratio, which can be obtained from only from core and corona, respectively. So for core, there is a scale of the switching temperature, 160 MeV, on the other hand, for string fermentation, the scale is about the scale is given characterized with the string tension, which is 1 GeV per femtoliter. So these are constant for each component. So keeping that in mind, looking back to these results, so you see this increase from this baseline for the omega pi ratio. So this is due to the gradual enhancement of simulated QGP in the systems. So it can be said that the partial QGP fluids are forced to be generated so that we can describe the strangest enhancement from PP to heavy ion collisions. So in that sense, the controlling parameter is the proportional coefficients of the cross section of the part-of-part scattering. So this is the starting point of our discussion. So our attitude is like, first we describe this omega pi ratio, and then because omega pi ratio would tell us how much fraction of the system is reached to equilibrium or not. So that's why we start a omega pi ratio, particle ratio. And here I'm showing cascade pi, phi pi, lambda pi, and p pi ratio as a function of multiplicity. Here again, these orange spots obtained from flow simulations, and they are compared with these open orange points, the results obtained from without hadronic rescatterings. And they are compared with these black Alice points. So what you see here is this significant suppression of yield ratios at central leaded collisions. And if you look at this difference between open orange and dark orange, this means that the yield ratio is suppressed due to the hadronic interactions. So this actually leads to the better agreement with the Alice experimental data, which means that the dissociation and annihilation of the hadrons in late stage plays an important role at central collisions. And also you see this visible hadronic rescattering effects in PP collisions as well. And here I'm showing the quark corona fluxion as a function of multiplicity and centrality classes in PP and heavy ion collisions. These orange spots are flow simulation results, and they are compared with Alice experimental data. And also I plotted these stacked bars. The red one is obtained from core contributions, and this blue one is obtained from corona contributions. And in lower panel, I'm showing its fluxion. So if you see a PP collisions, the excess of the core contribution happens only at the highest class. And if you see that in central collisions, the core components is dominant, while if you go to 40 to 60%, this reaches up to 20%. The corona contribution reaches up to 20%. However, we usually describe the results hydro calculations. However, this results might indicate that that would be not. We should include the corona components to describe such an intermediate centrality class as well.
Yuuka, can I have a question? Sorry, on the previous slide.
And here I'm showing. Okay.
Yeah, so the plot on the left Can you explain the x-axis? I don't understand it.
Yeah, good. This one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the multiplicity class. It's actually used in at least experiment, but it's so first the we only see the inelastic collision, and by sorting the multiplicity obtained at forward and backward, we sort the events, and after that.
Okay, so sigma sigma
it's the same as the
inelastic,
centrality.
right? So that
Sigma
is
inelastic is,
okay. So there's a delay.
sorry.
No, it's fine. I'll ask it. I'll think about it, and then maybe ask after the talk. So let's not.
It's just percentage of the cross section, centrality.
But then, if you have high percentage of cross section, shouldn't you have high D in charge D eta?
Oh, because it's 100% of the cross section.
Other way around.
1% of the cross section.
It's high.
Oh, it's percentage. It's not the. Oh, I thought it was a fraction. Okay. All right,
So
got
it's
it.
effectively the BP version of centrality.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm showing the fraction of core and column as a function D and D, that's so that to see the fraction of core and corona for PP and limited at the same time. And here we see the with multiplicity within our framework. And this is due to the similar distribution, similar phase space distribution of initially response for PP and the collision at the same multiplicity obtained from final state hadrons. And we extracted the onset of the core dominance, which is here. It's 80 in D and D eta. So if the multiplicity is about 18 in D and D eta, then you would see a core dominant matter at mutability. And in order to see more details, I'm showing the fraction core and corona as a function of PT. And here we have PP and the collisions, and both are obtained in almost minimum bias event. And for PP collisions, since this is minimum bias, the corona contribution dominates for all PT range. And if you see this leaded collisions, in low PT region, the core is dominant. But at 5.5 GeV, this dominant contribution flips, and at high PT region, the corona is dominant. But here, the interesting thing to see is this corona contribution at very low PT region. So it would be opposite from what is written in the textbook. So it's the low PT regime is not fully summarized according to our results. So we still have this. We have this a contribution, non-negligible contribution of corona, about 20% at a very low PT regime, and this actually plays an interesting role in final state observable. So in order to see that, I'm showing the mean PT and B2 as a function when charged obtained from leaded collision. So the orange is for simulations, and yellow is obtained from without scattering, and red and blue are obtained from core and corona. So what you see here is that the results obtained from core, the hydro, is diluted due to the existence of corona. So from red to yellow. And this can be considered as a far from equilibrium correction in hydro. And this is up to 5 to 11% collection, and for B22 it's 15 to 38%. So this probably this would indicate that in order to extract the information of QGP from experimental data, from a comparison between experimental data and theoretical model, we need to consider the corona contribution to probably extract the top transport coefficients, for example, in Bayesian analysis. And here I'm showing the charged particle PT spectra obtained from related collisions. This is 0 to 5%, 40 to 50%, and 70 to 80%. And in lower part, I'm showing data to model ratios. This red line is the core contribution with hadronic rescheduling, and the blue one is the flow simulation results. So this blue one contains core and corona. So what you see here is that the pure hydro result, the red one, cannot reproduce the slopes at very low PT ratio as it is. And for flow simulation results, the lack of the yield at very low PT region is compensated with the corona contribution. And here I'm showing the parameter set used in the DCCI. And this is actually the parameters that we change in PCA part. So except these two parameters, it's the same as default. So all the parameter used in PCA is almost monashun. That is because we want to know how far we can go as a naive combination of hydro and PCA with simple starting point. And so what is this PT0? Why we have to change this PT0? I will explain in the next slide. But this PT0 is used in the initial pattern simulation. And so this can be understood as an infrared cutoff for 2-to-2 cross section in initial pattern scheduling. So here's why we should change the PT0. So I'm showing the difference of the transverse energy evolution between hydro and string fermentation. Here we have transverse energy distribution. For the simple explanation, I'm showing leaded collision. And this green dots and blue dots are obtained in pattern level, and this green one is obtained from DCCI, and this is obtained from default PCA. And this red one and orange one is obtained in pattern level, and this is DCCI, and this is obtained from PCA. So you see the different opposite direction in the evolution of the transverse energy. And this is because for hydro, the transverse energy actually decreases due to the PdV work in longitudinal direction, while string fermentation, suppose that you have one string which have leading patterns in forward and backward, and that would produce hadrons at mid rapidity. So in that case, if we compare hadron level and pattern level, then transverse energy should increase in string fermentation. So this means that in order to get the same final state hadron multiplicity, we need more parton production at mid rapidity if we put a hydroevolution in later stage. So so that's why we changed the PT0 to enhance protonic production at mid rapidity. So what I wanted to say is that depending on the dynamics you want to put in the late stage, that would require different initial energy profile. So this is a very simple information, but we think this is also the important information for the initial stage of the heavy ion collisions. So this brings me to the summary side. We built the dynamical for commercialization model. We respect beam energy as a Monte Carlo event generator. And we treat both equilibrated and non-equilibrated matter. And we try to understand from low to high PT, from forward to backward rapidity, and from PP to heavy ion collisions. And we extracted the onset of core dominance, AT in DNT era. And also we saw the non-negligible corona correction even in the collisions, which dilutes PT by 5 to 11% and B22 by 15 to 38%. So what I wanted to tell you through this talk is towards accurate study of the QGP properties. We believe that it is very important to consider the both equilibrated and non-equilibrated matter in PP and heavy ion as well. And in order to have a consistent, in order to perform the consistent analysis and investigation, we should consider the incoming beam energy conservation. So that's all for this talk. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Yuuka, for the very great talk. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Yuuka, can you go to slide 23?
23.
Oh, this is cool. I didn't know this.
I didn't know that was a thing. That's really cool.
So I have a question on this, the plot on the right here. So just swapping back and forth between slide 22 and 23. Mm-hmm. So just look at, let's just take the core distribution, the red one. Mm-hmm. So that is the equilibrated partons, right?
That's the equilibrated one, but it's hadron production point.
Okay, so hadron production points that come out of the hydro.
Yeah, exactly.
So that peaks at something like, I don't know, 5 Fermi. Mm-hmm. And then what is this final one, and why does that keep going all the way to the, like, why doesn't it fall off right after the hadrons?
Oh, this.
Yeah.
You mean in the orange one?
Yeah.
We think that the orange one is going to shift it to the right. That right. Is what. So this is the final interaction point that we can see in hadronic rescattering. So these are the inputs of the hadronic.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, then we perform the hadronic reduction. So then final interaction point would be, yeah, push it towards the outward and forward in terms of time as well. So that's why.
Yeah, okay. So I didn't know that was after the rescattering. Okay. So now when you go to the next slide, in the case of the PP, the core one is still peaking very small, and then there's a very rapid fall off, but it actually looks like it falls off before the corona part. So that is truly the partonic system, right? So if I look at, I don't know, 7 Fermi, I have a higher probability for the well, on the right, yeah. So if I look at 7 Fermi, I have a higher probability for the corona to happen than the core. But the corona is still partons and the core is hadrons. So shouldn't hadrons typically come after partons, like by definition?
Okay, so this is this is not a parton. This is not parton. This is a already hadron, and so okay. So let's start from this core, and so the core, the lifetime of the hydro is short. So that's why we have the peak here and
Right.
this slope here. That's the reason for the shape of the core. And for corona, this is obtained from string fragmentation. So it's like production points obtained from string fragmentation. So so it's not that we have like hadrons
I see.
while is the corona pattern is still corona. It's
Yeah.
actually obtained from string fragmentation.
Okay, I see. So they're already strings at that point. So okay, so then they're comparable. I thought they're just part of. Okay.
Is someone looking?
Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I have a more general question, Yuuka. Have you contemplated trying to do this with the beam energy scan data? I mean, at some point, maybe you just have total core.
Total core. So which one?
If you go down to the low energies that Rick is taking.
The liquids, sorry, it's a bit hard to listen to.
She's asking about the like lower center of mass energies in the REC beam energy scan.
Yeah, in order to do so, since we don't have variant number, we don't solve the volume current. So in order to do so, we have to include for example, finite. We have to include the EOS, which covers a finite volume density region, and also we have to solve the variant current in hydro. So, but we don't have such a finite hadron, finite baryon density. So that would be the future work. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one more. Okay, it's not really a question, but a comment. So I really like that you guys played with the PT0 parameter to increase your kind of parton count in order to get DCCI to have the correct multiplicity. So there is a new tune of Pythia out there. So it's called the Detroit tune. So I would be curious to see. So we also had to vary the PT0 and amongst other parameters, the PT0 as well, different from Monash, along the same direction. We had to lower it to get the correct underlying event multiplicity at RIC and the LHC. So I'd be very curious to see how that affects your overall DN data inside DCCI if you use the Detroit tune.
Detroit tune. So I heard that from Yasuki, but I actually don't know really much about the Detroit too, but you're saying that they're using smaller PD0. And in our case, so as I explained it here, since we have hydro evolution in final state, we have to get larger energy at initial state. So that's just why we have to include this PT0. But this actually, we have to do this in order to get the same multiplicity as it is in experimental data. So am I answering to your question?
No, it's just a curiosity. If you put in the Detroit tune, because there are some other parameters that we tweaked so that it would match the PP data. So maybe that will be a useful set of initial conditions in your case.
But isn't it for the jet event? That's what I heard from Yasuki, but is it also used in like minima bias PP?
Yeah, we tuned it to fit the pion spectra, the underlying event. Well, that includes jet, but there's also Drell-Yan fitting. So it's both min bias and kind of hard scattered events. So it should work for both.
Okay. So yeah, that will be interesting if
yeah, I'll send you the parameters and we can chat offline. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Let's see within model. Yeah. Thank you so much for the information.
So I have one more question if time permits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you actually initialize the whole like parton shower before you feed it into the hydroevolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So have you considered, for example, like also try to break this procedure into times and take into consider like some more, let's say like the interaction between the medium and the hard-scattering protons. For example, we have like some substructure modification or something like that to, yeah, basically just let the medium or the core, as you call it, modify the hard particles in the process, or is it already included?
Yeah, that is actually what we want to do in the future work. And so yeah, since as you noticed that our model, like in that sense, we have like simplified a kind of jet quenching as well, since we have the interaction. We have interaction between a non-conjugated parton and fluid, but that would be, yeah, yeah. We want to see the like how, for example, the jet, the configuration, the constituent can be like changed due to this dynamical core fauna. Yeah, but that can be after we implemented the jet quenching. But of course, yes, that's one of the future work.
Okay.
But we haven't seen. And can I say one thing on since actually we have the problem to describe high PT regime, and that's why we still haven't seen the high PT regime. So for example, if you see this PT spectra, while we have corona components at high PT, that the spectra is deviated from experimental data, even like 0 to 5 or so. And this is actually coming from that the default PCR already is doing good at the description for the high PT productions, even if they don't have jet quenching. So since we use the default PCR for the inputs, there is a kind of deviation, a lack of the multiplicity at high PT, and that's why we haven't seen the high PT observable. But yeah, that would be, but yeah, that would be interesting to see.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, if not, then let's thank you again.
Thank you so much.